Well, hey, everybody, and welcome back to Mindset Monday. So glad that you are here today. The goal of these conversations is really to partner with some subject matter experts within our community to provide you helpful content and resources as we navigate the unknown of this season with COVID-19. And today I am with a very special guest and a dear friend of mine, Dr. Mike Sytsma. Dr. Mike is a fan favorite in the SB home. We love him. And just to be honest, because he can't say this to you, my husband and I love going to him for counseling. He's just a wise man. But I also have a friendship with him because of Gwinnett Church. I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Mike. He's been working with couples as both a counselor and pastor for 34 years. He got his PhD at the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and is a counselor who works with a team at Building Intimate Marriages. And we'll tell you a little bit more about how to get connected with him at the end. Dr. Mike and his wife, Karen, have been married for 35 years. They have two boys, 26 and 22. So they know how to do it, people. And together they serve at Gwinnett Church and are a vital part of our church. We are so grateful for them. If you've spent a moment with Karen or Dr. Mike, you know that they love helping relationships flourish. And in a season like this with COVID-19, I wouldn't say that relationships are always flourishing. Right now, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of stress. And we wanted to bring Dr. Mike on to ask him, how do we navigate this season and what can we do in that? So I'm going to ask Dr. Mike a few questions. We're going to be here for about 25, 30 minutes together, and it's going to be really special. So get a notepad out, or if you're walking, just, take some mental notes, but it's going to be great. So Dr. Mike, we're so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor. I love doing this kind of stuff.
Well, I want to dive in just to ask you, you're a counselor, you were counseling in this season, and in the midst of COVID-19 and the season of social distancing, how are you seeing this impacting relationships? What are you seeing right now?
In a variety of different ways, obviously, because couples are very different. Some couples are really struggling with it. Some couples seem to settle in and create some couples are more resilient and do okay with it. One of the things we talk about in the field is to make steel. You take iron and carbon and you have to mix them to make the metal. And you do that by placing them in a crucible. And if you just put them in the crucible, they don't really mix, you don't create steel. If you put an intense amount of heat in there and allow them to melt, now we have steel, but it's often a brittle, not a high quality steel. You put them under pressure and now we have a much higher quality steel. You set off a crisis or an explosion inside that crucible, and what you have is a really high-grade steel, very malleable, very valuable. And I look at times like this as kind of the explosion that goes off inside of marriages as we're trying to allow these two metals to really become one, to blend together. And the key is, can the crucible contain it? Because if the crucible breaks, everything kind of falls apart. And some marriages really do well in this. They're really resilient. They do good in figuring it out and not allowing something to throw them off track. Other marriages, it doesn't take too much to get them thrown off track. It's been interesting to see some of my couples come in, and the first couple of weeks was rough. All of a sudden the kids are home. Our schedules are I am being asked to do things I don't know how to do. I am seeing things in my spouse that I didn't know existed. We spent enough time apart that I've never noticed that about you before. I don't know that I like it. And so for the first few weeks, couples were really struggling. And then I'd watch a section of the couples, they'd come in and go, you know what? We've kind of found our groove as a family. We've kind of figured it out. We know how to give each other space, and we know how to lean in, and those couples, that type of resilience is just really critical. So it's dependent on how resilient the couple was, how well they're doing as a family.
Wow. I love that. That has definitely been Stuart and I's story. That first 2 weeks, you're like, are we going to make this? Yeah, I like what you said. We learned so much. I don't think he knew how type A I was, but he knows now, Dr. Mike. He knows now.
Yep.
No, but I love that point about resilience. And I think that's a great tool for us to have. Another question around that, though, is what are some of the helpful tools? Being a couple that's resilient is a character quality of who you are. But what are some tools for that couple that might say, we're still getting used to each other right now? What are some of the tools that we can use in seasons like this? And maybe for someone listening, they're watching this a year from now and COVID-19 is not even a thing, but you're going through a hard season. What are some things that you think we can use in this season to help our relationships?
I really think one of the key points or one of the key skills is that of having a really good vision, figuring out where we're going, and then being intentional about pursuing it. And we know that as business people, if I don't have a vision, I'm not going to get anywhere. But it's the same in our marriage. We choose to marry because I believe in who we're going to be. I believe in who you're going to be, and I believe in who I'm going to be with you. We've got a vision for that early relationship. And I like to tell couples, 2 to 3 years into it, if that long, we realize, wait, you're not who I really thought you were going to be. And I'm not who I thought I was going to be with you. How do we reshape that vision, which is where the resiliency comes in again, to step back and say, okay, this is what I've got. What's it going to really look like? How do I move forward with a different kind of vision in mind? And you have something like this pandemic step in and totally throw our balance off, totally throw our routine off, and to step back in and say, okay, this is what it is. Who are we going to be? And William Ury wrote a book called The Power of a Positive No. And he said, it's easy to say no to things when we know what our yes is. So I spent a lot of time helping couples to figure out what their vision is for their marriage, what their vision is for themselves. What kind of a person are you going to be walking through this kind of crisis? Are you going to be the kind of individual that demands that everybody do it your way in order for you to be okay? That's going to be pretty miserable for you and everybody around you. Can you have a vision that's a bit more workable? And can you be intentional in it? How are you going to handle your health? I get really concerned at listening to people allowing their sleep schedule to get totally thrown off. And all of our research says that's not healthy for us. People who are not managing their nutrition well, people who are getting into, the alcohol industry tells us that alcohol consumption's gone up about 55%.
Wow.
Is that the kind of person you want to be? And are you utilizing it in a way that's good for nutrition? What's your exercise pattern look like? Are you pursuing who you want to be? The porn industry tells us that porn use has gone up at least 15%, depending on the day and the time. It's easy for us to kind of slide into people that we're not proud of if we don't have a vision that we're striving toward. And that doesn't have to be a well-developed paragraph that says, here's who I'm going to be. But I can set out to say, today I'm going to be a gracious person. Today I'm going to really be a loving person. Today I'm going to work on and grab a hold of that and really begin to pursue it.
I love that.
And not demand that everybody else fit within it.
So let me ask you a question about vision. Right now where I am, right, I've got 3 boys under 6. So if I wanted to create a vision, I know, no, I don't know if anyone's bowing down to me. Not those 3 kids. Anyways, they're awesome. If I wanted to create a vision statement, though, as a mom, or it's more specifically for this conversation within our marriage, how do we do that in the midst of this season? I mean, would you say, hey, take 30 minutes in the morning, or just once you make one, review it as a couple? I guess, for me, I can have all the right motives and desires, and then an hour later, I find myself right back to the version of Lauren I don't want to be, right? And so how do you keep that? I guess I would ask, how do you create that vision, and then how do you keep it front and center as a couple?
I think we create the vision. My favorite question is, 10 years from now, who are you going to be proud of? We all know we're not a perfect individual.
Right.
Who will I be proud of 10 years from now? As I look back and I go, oh, I like who I was then. And just, I like your idea of, morning sitting down and going, who am I going to be today? Who will I be proud of? When my spouse doesn't behave the way I want them to, who am I going to be? I don't control them. They're really clear on that. So how do I be the person that I am proud of anyway? And sometimes we need to have reminders. I often ask people, what do you use at work to remind you? Go ahead and use that. I've had more than one client set an alarm on their phone or watch that goes off every couple of hours. And when it goes off, they recenter themselves. Wait, this is the kind of person I'm going to be today. Until it becomes habitual. Put sticky notes around. Do something that says this is who I'm going to be. And when we step off the path, when I realize, let's say, depict the grace again. I decide I'm going to be a gracious person today. When I step off the path, the moment I realize I'm not being gracious, I need to own it and say, I'm sorry, I'm not being gracious. Can I start all over again? And nobody likes to do that. No, none of us like to out ourselves. But if we out ourselves a few times, it's amazing how our unconscious brain goes, yeah, we're not doing that again, and stops us from doing the behavior that we're going to out. And we can pretty quickly actually shape ourselves if we're intentional about it and we keep pursuing that vision.
That's really great. I love that. I was reading the other day about this idea of that asking our kids for a redo, which, by the way, I'm asking for that all the time. But I think one thing that they see in that, to your point, is the humility that mom doesn't have it all together. And then I've started asking Stuart for a redo more than I probably need to. But I mean, it really is. I mean, it kind of lessens that I'm right and I'm sticking to my guns and I'm not bowing down until you do and all that kind of stuff of just, hey, can we have a redo of that conversation? Tension's high. Things are stressful. Can we just restart over? And that kind of takes away some of that pride and angst that I feel like we all have. So I think that's a great point in that.
And more than what it does for the others, I agree with you. It's brilliant modeling for our kids. When they get to where they start asking for redos, okay, this is a win. It's valuable for our spouse, but I think most importantly, it is great training for me when I say, wait, that's not how I want to handle it. I need to restart. And it shapes my way of viewing myself.
I love that. So I think that's a great point, Dr. Mike, when it comes to us creating a vision. I think for those of you out there who are wired like Jeff Henderson, you probably have like a 2-paragraph vision statement already about your life. For the rest of us who don't, even probably just characteristics and words. This doesn't have to be the most well-crafted statement, but in this season, waking up saying, this is who I want to be. Here's some words that are going to define that vision of who I want to be for now. And then if you have time and margin, maybe even the version of me I want to be 10 years from now. But I think that is a great idea. And when you miss that mark, being able to say, hold on, I'm not a failure. I just want to redo.
Correct.
That's great.
Everybody's grieving right now. Grief is a big part of life. Grieving that I'm not perfect. I'm not always who I want to be. My kids are way not always who I want them to be. My spouse is not. I can grieve the loss of it and still pursue a vision. I might have to adapt how I get there because you're not helping me. Or you're actually sometimes even going against what I would like, but I can still pursue that vision by adapting the method. That's the resilience that comes in.
I love that. Now, let me ask you this question because on your bio, on your website, one of the things that you say that you're most passionate about is looking at marriages and helping marriages with hope and increased confidence. And I thought those were two really interesting characteristics, hope and increased confidence. Would you speak to why you feel like those characteristics are needed for couples in their marriages?
Because that, a couple years in, when I realized, and like I joke, some couples is 2 weeks in, when I realized, wait, this marriage isn't turning out the way I thought it was going to turn out. And as humans, we tend to start by trying to make you different. If you will be different, then I'll still get what I want. but our spouse is usually pretty human and isn't really receptive to us trying to make them be who we want them to be. And by the time couples get in to see me, they've really lost hope in any kind of a vision. And they've lost their confidence in being able to get that back and able to figure out life with you, life with our kids. And when they step in, they're ready to just give up. And, we talk in our field that every couple has three options. The option of live with it as it is, get out, or lean in and make it better. And we invite couples to take the get out off the table. If we take that one off the table, and sometimes that's an appropriate choice, but we invite them when they can to take that off the table, that leaves only two options. I'm either going to stay miserable with you, or I'm going to figure it out. And figuring it out is that resilience piece, and it requires to have some vision and to step in and say, there is a way you can figure this out. And it means stepping back and you figuring out the kind of person that you're going to be proud of, even if your spouse doesn't change, even if your kids aren't the kind of kids you want them to be, you can still be the person that God's called you to be. You can still be somebody that you're proud of. And there are skills that we can teach you that help you to get there. And they're often not real difficult skills. It means we have to grieve some of what we thought we were going to get that we'd still like to hang on to, but yeah, it isn't going to be a part of my life. We grieve the loss of it. That allows us then to lean in, re-envision our marriage together. Now we have hope. And then we add in some of the skills that we've got 30, 50 years worth of research on what works in marriages, what works in families, what helps them to be resilient. And we can lean in and give them those skills along with the hope. And all of a sudden, they don't need us anymore. They just start to thrive. And that is so cool. It's fun to watch.
I love that. Well, and I think in a season like this, as you said early or on, that all of us are seeing things in our spouse that maybe we didn't know were as prevalent as they are. And even for those of us right now to grieve, I can't fix them. I'm not going to spend the next 2 to 3 months changing my spouse to morph them into the version I want. I might have to grieve. And I think that's a great statement to be reminded. I just know in all of our marriages, we have to grieve the picture that we did have for the one that we are, and realizing if I am going to lean in, like you said, in that third option, if I'm going to lean in to this marriage, it means I have to give up what I think this marriage is and receive it for what it is, And I think that's a great statement as we head into what all has happened and what's going forward, especially as families are financially struggling in this season. Maybe the picture they had that way. Maybe your spouse can't be there for you emotionally like you expected or desired them to be. So I think that's a great word and a reminder for us to actually allow ourselves to grieve. I think as people, we're not quick to grieve. We're quick to pass over, and you probably have all these clinical words for it. But I know for myself, I'm not quick to grieve because it means I have to take a pause and actually evaluate that what I expected isn't happening or isn't being seen. So
and may not.
Right.
I really feel for those whose businesses are failing during this, for those who've lost their jobs, for those who've stepped in and are like, what am I seeing going on with my kids? I didn't know this was happening.
Yes.
Or with my spouse. Those are really tough. And, in one respect, if we go back to the crucible, that's increasing the pressure on it. The beauty of it is if people lean into it and they really re-envision it, they learn the skills that they need, that type of pressure can draw them even closer. If they don't have the strength of the relationship, then that crucible breaks and it falls apart. But I've watched couples walk through the most horrific kind of crises and use those crises to really grow together when they can define a shared vision and fight for it. Yep.
Well, personally, I just want to say this. I'm not like getting a free counseling session for saying this, so I just want to say that out loud. But Dr. Mike, you've helped Stuart and I lean into some stuff that we didn't want to lean into. And I know for both of us, that was a grieving process. And yet we had to lean in so that ultimately we could be better together. And I think that the Instagram version of all of our lives looks so endearing. But the reality is the painful part of of grieving means that we don't deny that there's real stuff and real expectations that are being, quote, shattered, but we lean into it. And I love that, because I feel like if we don't grieve what's happening, then we're going to bury ourselves, whether it's in shopping or what you were saying earlier, porn or alcohol or whatever it is, our vice of choice.
Yep.
Anything, our children, we could bury ourselves in our children versus what needs to happen in our marriage. But I just know for us, and we have by no means arrived, but I know the tough work is making it purer gold than it could have been. And so anyways, I just want to encourage all of you out there who are like, wow, this is extremely disappointing, that we don't get stunted by the fact our marriages may be disappointing or frustrating right now. And we push through and we're able to be resilient marriages, because that really is the test of time. So I'm not saying that as someone who has 35 years of marriage, but you are, Dr. Mike, so we can learn from you. I love that. That's awesome. Let me ask you this. This time, like we just spoke about, some marriages, and we know this, people are being stuck in homes together and their marriage wasn't that strong to begin with, or, there's just outside circumstances that have made it maybe crumble, or maybe things that they've discovered about one another that have been secrets that are making it crumble. Whatever that is, if a marriage is going through a pretty tough time right now and things are escalating, how would you say they handle that? I mean, I know we're saying be resilient in this, but what are the steps you take when things are really rough right now? What does self-care look like in that? When's the time to get away and build some margin? What does togetherness look like? Just in general, would love to know your thoughts for that marriage out there who's really going through a tough time.
The reality of it is every family, every couple, every individual has plenty of ick. That's my favorite diagnostic term, icky. And we have plenty of it. And it's really messy even trying to figure out how to get a pathway through it. If our vision is we're going to be a couple, we're going to be together, we're going to figure it out. Maybe that's as defined as I can have it right now. But then when the icky stuff starts to show up, I'm going to work through it anyways. And somebody stepped up to Karen and I real recently, and she said, wow, 35 years. What's the key? And I said, grace. Grace is the key, because I need a lot of it from her. I am just not a perfect individual. Our marriage is not a perfect individual. Our kids are not perfect. And if we don't extend grace, it's going to go really bad, especially the more intense pressure and heat there is in that crucible, the more we have to accept that it's okay, you're not perfect.
Yeah.
You're striving for the same vision I am. We're both fighting for the same thing. So we can come alongside each other. We don't have to go up against each other. Mm. So when I can realize, yeah, you want a good marriage too, you're kind of tough to do good marriage with at times. You're kind of tough to parent at times. But you know what? I'm kind of tough to live with me at times too. And we extend grace to each other, which is unmerited favor. Maybe you don't even deserve me extending grace for it. Being merciful, doing preemptive forgiveness, all the things that are involved in grace. But when we do, we can just go, yeah, that was kind of icky, but we'll be okay. Mm. We'll keep leaning in. We'll figure this out. I choose you in this process. And I think that allows for the resilience. It allows us to say, I'm seeing that you need more time alone. I don't know how we're going to do it in this house, but let's figure it out. Because neither of us like who you are when you don't get time alone. Or you need more time to do this exercise, or you need more time watching your shows, or how can we get to where we like ourselves and each other better, and we extend grace to get there. I think that's important.
I love that. What would you say to that couple who maybe are not in agreement as to what they want? Maybe it's like, I do want to extend you grace, but he or she is not in a season where that is, and maybe maybe divorce is on the table, or maybe it's just it feels impossible because our alignment or our vision is not on the same page, And I think that's true for many of us in different seasons of our marriage. How do you realign, and how do you know when alignment will not happen?
It is the extremely rare couple that I work with that we can't figure out what a shared vision and a shared alignment is, but it often does take stepping outside of ourselves to do it. And I think that is part of what we bring into it. It doesn't have to be a professional therapist. It can be a mentor. It can be a good friend. But often we have to step outside to have somebody look and go, yeah, your spouse is better than you're defining them right now. Your marriage is better than you're looking through really shaded glasses because you've been wounded and because you're not getting what you want. All those things that are human that taint our vision. And sometimes we have to have somebody outside that says, remember the person you married. Remember their heart. That heart is still in there. It's just been wounded by you, just like they can't see the heart that they married in you because of your wounds. Let's recapture that heart, redefine the vision, and lean into it. I invite people to do it. It doesn't always work, but it's pretty rare that it doesn't if they're really willing to fight for that vision and to do the hard work that we've talked about, extend grace, grieve, be resilient.
Yeah. So Dr. Mike, for the person, I love that, that they share the same vision, they're in alignment with each other. I think that's great. But for the person out there who says, I'm willing to go to counseling, or I'm willing to meet with a mentor, but you're not, whomever that may be, I would love for you to speak to what do we do in that moment when someone doesn't want to be on the same vision with us, and maybe they don't want out of the marriage, but they definitely don't want alignment either. What would you say to that couple and to that spouse who feels somewhat stuck and immobile?
The beauty of what we do is one person's change does change the entire relationship. If I begin to change, the marriage changes. It can't not, because a key player in it is different. Just like if I decide I'm going to start screaming and yelling and blowing up every time, I've changed the relationship. If I shift into healthier skills like healthy communication or being gracious, taking a curious stance instead of a condemning stance. There's lots of things we talk about in therapy. If I start to do it, the relationship can't not change. It doesn't always change the way I want it to, but it's going to begin to change. So I invite those individuals to start to work on themselves. Get with a mentor, get with a coach, get it with a counselor, get with God, and what needs to grow up in me, what needs to change in me. And you start to do that. And when you do, often the spouse pushes back, but we hang on to it, and then the system starts to shift. We can change things by ourselves. We can't always determine the outcome, but we can ensure that we don't get stuck in something that isn't working.
I love that. Well, and we'll link this to the show notes, but that's one of the reasons our care ministry at Gwinnett Church exists, to help you as an individual if you are in a season with your marriage or even within a relationship and you feel stuck and say, well, I at least want to own my part and work on me. We have some ways to do that. And a lot of it is through connecting you with incredible counselors like Dr. Mike. But we have a few other things that we'd love to help you with. So please know that as well.
You got a really good list of referral counselors that you can send to. So
yes, incredible counselors. Dr. Mike, I have one last question for you. And this is a real practical question for all of you out there. And it's around this. One of the things that you've helped my marriage with is delineating between dates. And you said there's fun dates out there and there's working dates. Now, if we go to the color test, which a lot of us have been talking about with Kathleen Edelman's study, I'm almost a pure red. So everything is a task to me. I mean, I care about people, but and then there's my husband who everything is people and fun. And so we would go on dates and I would want to talk about the kids' future and college funds. And my husband would say, can we please just enjoy a dinner without an intentional, I would come with an agenda and slip it across the table. Okay. So I would love for you to speak to, in this season, even though everyone's somewhat still isolated at home, there's probably someone in the family that wants to get stuff done and have a clean home. And then there's someone in the family who's like, can we please have fun in a very stressful season? So would you delineate what those dates include and just the practicality of how it helps a marriage?
Yeah, let me start by saying, one of my professors in my PhD program said that the key to marriages was accepting influence from each other. He said where you have one spouse, and to use the example you gave, one spouse who's all about the business and one spouse who's all about the play, neither of those are wrong. Both of them are good. If they're both the same, things kind of struggle along, and accepting influence from each other is how we, one parent is harsh and one parent is lax. That's actually good as long as they can accept influence from each other. One wants to play and one wants to get stuff done. Both are good. Can you accept influence from each other? And the working date and the fun date are designed in some respects to split out some of it and to help couples move forward. The fun date is just that. It's what we used to do to seduce, to entice, to draw our spouse to each other. And I tell couples they need to do that every couple of weeks. The idea is you don't do any work. It's all about play. It's all about connecting, about enjoying each other. And we have some ideas on the website for couples to do. And then the working date is a business meeting. And I tell couples it's the most transformative exercise that I give couples. Couples that will do those on a weekly basis will see their marriage change for the good. And it's just setting down. It's time limited. There are a bunch of rules that I tell couples they have to follow in this working date until they learn how a working date runs. And then it allows them to keep stuff cleaned up in their marriage. Song of Solomon says, not let the foxes tear at the field. And it keeps all of those little things kind of cleaned up to allow them to move forward. So it's a 1 hour a week for the working date and then several hours every other week for the fun date.
I love that. I've found it so helpful for us, especially even in this season of random Zoom calls that come up and who's got the kids and we're trying to do school and all of that. I feel like it's such a practical step where there can be tension in marriages. It's just another tool to help you all and to help all of us help our marriages thrive. So I love that.
The vision and intentionality. This is what we're going to do. And we carve out these times and we protect them. Yep.
I agree with you. It has made me feel so honored in our marriage because that hour, and I know it can only be an hour, Stuart sets the clock so that I don't go over an hour, but that made me feel like, okay, I don't have to be anxious all week. I've got all my questions answered. And he loves me so well by giving me that hour. But man, those 3 hours or 4 hours of a date, he's like, this isn't great. You're so fun again. I'm like, I'm always fun. Anyways, but so yeah, enough about our marriage, but it is extremely intentional. And we would love for you to learn more about that as well. So check out those PDFs. But Dr. Mike, thank you so much for the time today. This has been extremely helpful. And I think for all of us, this is just going to help us be more resilient in our marriages in a season where we need resiliency overall. And as you said, ultimately, the greatest value being that we need grace for one another in this season and grace for ourselves. And that's why we want to begin these conversations about Mindset Monday so that you start your week out knowing that none of us are going to do it perfectly, but all of us have grace in the process. And so I hope this conversation has been helpful for you. We can't wait to be back here next week for Mindset Monday. Before we go, Dr. Mike, I'd love for you to let us know how we can stay connected to you and all that you and your team do. So can you let us know a little bit about that?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we've got 8 different therapists at Building Intimate Marriages. And if they just go to intimatemarriage.org, they can connect to our website. They can join our email list to get little stuff that we send out occasionally. There's a Try This at Home that has these 2 exercises and several other exercises on them. Just reach out however we can help.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Mike, for being with us today. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And we will see you next week for Mindset Monday.